When Eli Morgan received the message from the Galactic Registry, he almost dropped his cup of cold coffee. The holographic seal shimmered in the air above his table, glowing a soft blue, the official mark of the Zilari Union. He hadn't seen that color since the day his best friend, Commander Thal, had died. He didn't want to open it. For a long moment, he just stared at the projection, heart heavy, throat tight. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence around him. Finally, he whispered, "Play message." A calm, synthetic voice spoke in perfect galactic standard. By the laws of the Zilari Union, the late Commander Thal of House Varen names his successor and inheritor, human designation Eli Morgan. Eli blinked. That can't be right. He thought maybe it was a translation error. Thal was a Zilari noble, commander of the Union fleet and one of the most respected soldiers of his kind. Eli was just an engineer from Earth, a simple man who knew more about coolant leaks than politics. Why would Thal leave him anything? But the message continued, calm and unbroken. In accordance with Zilari custom, all possessions, holdings, and familial bonds are hereby transferred to Eli Morgan. Familial bonds? Eli repeated, his voice barely a whisper. What does that even mean? He didn't have to wait long for the answer. Eli had met Commander Thal 10 years earlier during the siege of Korma 9. It was chaos, human and Zilari fleets fighting, side by side against the Drevik swarm. Eli had been a repair officer, stuck deep in the engine decks of the human frigate Artemis. When the ship was hit, and its reactor was seconds from going critical, it was Thal's vessel that docked alongside. Everyone had evacuated, everyone except Eli, who refused to leave until the reactor was stable. When Thal found him, the human was half burned and coughing smoke, still trying to rewire a coolant valve with his bare hands. Instead of dragging him away, Thal helped. The alien's long silver fingers moved fast, elegant, and precise. Together they stopped the meltdown. After that, they became inseparable. Eli didn't understand all of Thal's customs, and Thal never quite understood Earth's sarcasm or humor, but something between them just clicked. They shared drinks, stories, and scars. They saved each other's lives more than once. And when the war ended, Thal had insisted that Eli serve aboard his flagship, the Solace. For years they roamed the stars, explorers, peacekeepers, brothers. Then, 3 months ago, Thal had fallen sick. The doctor said it was a rare Zilari illness, something humans couldn't even pronounce. Eli had sat beside his bed in the ship's medbay for weeks, refusing to leave. Thal had smiled through the pain, his skin turning pale silver blue, his eyes dimming like fading stars. "You humans," Thal had said weakly, "you measure time in years. My people measure it in bonds. You, Eli Morgan, are the strongest bond I ever had." And then one quiet night, with no warning, he was gone. Now Eli stood alone in his quarters, staring at the message that said he had inherited everything, the ship, the accounts, the house name, and whatever familial bonds meant. He sighed and rubbed his temples. "Thal, what did you do, you crazy old alien?" There was a soft chime at the door. Eli frowned. "Enter." The door slid open and someone stepped in, tall, graceful, wrapped in flowing silver fabric that shimmered like starlight. Her eyes were bright violet, and her hair glowed faintly under the ship's light. She was beautiful in a way that wasn't human, too perfect, too peaceful. "Are you Eli Morgan?" she asked softly. Her voice was calm but carried something deep beneath it, sorrow, strength, and something else he couldn't name. "Yes," he said slowly. "And you are?" She lowered her head in a gentle bow. "I am Sira, widow of Commander Thal of House Varen." Eli's chest tightened. I'm sorry for your loss." She looked up at him, her eyes glistening. "Our loss," she said quietly. Then after a pause, she added words that made his stomach twist. "By the will of my husband, I now belong to your house. To you." Eli took a step back. "To me? No, that's not right." "It is Zilari law," she said softly, almost apologetic. "A bondmate cannot be left without a house. My husband chose you. You are now my protector, my companion, my family." Eli felt the room tilt around him. His mind raced. Thal had left him his ship, his legacy, and his wife. For a long moment he couldn't speak. Then he whispered, his voice trembling, "Thal, what have you done?" Outside the window, the stars drifted silently past. witnesses to a new bond neither of them had asked for, but both were now bound to by the will of a dying friend. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the ship, Eli thought he could almost hear Thal's voice, faint, amused, and filled with trust. "Take care of her, brother. She's my heart." Eli didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in the captain's cabin of the Solace, staring at the empty chair across the table. Thal's chair. The hum of the ship sounded louder now, like a heartbeat echoing in a hollow chest. On the table lay Thal's old insignia, a small metal crest shaped like a starburst, its edges worn from years of battles. Sirah's words replayed in his mind again and again. "By the will of my husband, I now belong to your house, to you." Eli didn't understand how someone could belong to another person. On Earth, people chose who they wanted to love, who they wanted to follow. But the Zilari were ancient, bound by tradition older than human civilization itself. Still, he couldn't accept it. Not like this. When Sirah came to see him the next morning, she moved quietly, almost like she floated. Her silver robe shimmered softly in the cabin light, and her hair was tied with a simple crystal clasp. She didn't look like someone who had lost everything, yet her eyes told another story. There was pain there, deep, silent pain, hidden behind calm control. "Commander Morgan," she greeted formally. He winced. "Just Eli, please," she nodded slightly. Eli, for a moment neither of them spoke. The air between them was heavy with memories that weren't theirs alone. Eli gestured for her to sit. "I'm sorry if I seemed rude yesterday," he began carefully. "It's just, all of this is strange for me. I didn't expect Ann to inherit a wife," she finished softly. There was no anger in her tone, only quiet understanding. He looked down at his hands. "Yeah, that." Sirah gave a faint smile, the first one he'd seen. "It is strange for me as well. In my people's eyes, I am now yours to protect. But that does not mean ownership. It means trust, duty, connection." Eli looked up, meeting her violet eyes. "So Thal wanted me to look after you?" Her smile faded. "No, he wanted us to look after each other." Her words sank deep into his chest. He could almost hear Thal's voice again, teasing him in that calm, proud tone. "You always protect everyone else, Eli. Who will protect you when I'm gone?" Maybe this was his answer. Days passed slowly aboard the Solace. The crew had been dismissed after Thal's funeral, leaving only Eli and Sirah to tend to the ship. It felt like living in a tomb. Corridors filled with silence, cabins untouched. The faint echo of laughter still haunting the mess hall. Eli spent his days in the engine room, tinkering with systems that didn't need repair. Sirah would appear now and then, standing quietly at the doorway, watching him work. She seemed to find comfort in the hum of machines, in the way humans focused their minds to keep busy through pain. One evening she asked him, "Why do humans work when they grieve?" He wiped sweat from his forehead and shrugged. "Because if we stop, the memories catch up." She tilted her head slightly as if tasting the meaning of his words. "On Zalar, we sing when we grieve. We believe every song keeps the spirit's light alive a little longer." Her voice softened. "Would you like to hear one?" Eli nodded. She closed her eyes and began to hum. It wasn't a human melody. It was something older, something that seemed to stretch beyond the walls of the ship. Her voice shimmered like wind through crystal. The sound wrapped around him, warm and sad and beautiful all at once. When she finished, he realized he was crying. She opened her eyes slowly and smiled. "You loved him deeply." "Yeah," Eli whispered. "He was my brother in every way that mattered." Sirah reached across the table and placed her slender hand on his. Then his choice was not a mistake. That night, Eli couldn't stop thinking about her words. Thal had known what he was doing. Maybe he had seen the loneliness that waited for both of them, the soldier without his commander, the widow without her family. Maybe he believed they could heal each other. In the quiet of the ship, Eli looked at the stars beyond the viewport. "Thal," he said softly, "I don't know if I can live up to what you wanted, but I'll try." Somewhere deep in his heart, he could almost feel Thal's laughter again, that rumbling, proud sound that used to echo through the halls. "You always do, Eli. You always try." The ship drifted on through the endless dark, carrying two souls bound by loss, by honor, and by the last wish of a friend who had believed in something stronger than blood, something that even death could not end. Eli had never believed in fate. He believed in effort, in hard work, in fixing broken things, and surviving one day at a time. But after Thal's death, after Sira's arrival, he began to think maybe fate was real after all. As the solace drifted through the stars, Eli often found himself remembering how it all began. The first time a human and a Zalari had become brothers. It was 13 years ago. During the siege of Korma 9, the human fleet had been losing. The Drevik swarm, massive insect-like creatures, had surrounded the planet, burning everything in their path. Eli had been a junior engineer, stationed on the human ship Artemis. When a Drevik plasma strike hit the reactor, panic spread like fire. Everyone was told to evacuate. But Eli refused. He stayed behind, trying to stop the meltdown. He knew the ship would explode, killing thousands of soldiers still fleeing nearby. He remembered the smell of burning wires, the heat that made the metal walls glow red. Then, out of nowhere, a Zalari shuttle docked onto the hull. The door burst open. And there stood Thal, tall, silver-skinned, wearing armor that shimmered like liquid light. His voice was calm but commanding. "You, human! You'll die if you stay here," Eli shouted back. "Then help me or move aside." For a moment Thal looked shocked. No one had ever talked to him like that. But then he grinned, showing the faint markings along his jaw that glowed when he smiled. Without another word, he jumped in and started rerouting the coolant systems with Eli. They worked side by side, fighting fire, smoke, and heat. Every second felt like an eternity. When the reactor finally stabilized, they both collapsed on the metal floor, laughing like madmen. That was the beginning. After the war, they served together on the Solace. Thal was a commander by title, but he always treated Eli as an equal. He loved human jokes, even though he rarely understood them. And he loved arguing about philosophy, about honor, death, and what it meant to be alive. Thal once told him, "You humans are strange. You live such short lives, yet you love so deeply. It frightens me sometimes." Eli had laughed. "And you Zalari live for centuries but never stop acting like soldiers. That frightens me." They had shared everything, victories, losses, the quiet between missions. Sometimes when the ship was quiet, Thal would talk about his homeworld. He would describe the glowing forests of Zelar, the rivers that sang in the night, and the sky that never went dark because of its twin suns. He would talk about Sira, too. "She was promised to me by our houses," he once said, "but she became my choice long before the ceremony." Eli remembered the way Thal's eyes had softened when he said her name. "She is calm where I am storm," Thal had told him. "She keeps my heart steady." Now sitting in the same chair Thal once used, Eli felt that same calm whenever Sira entered the room. She never tried to fill the silence. She simply existed in it, graceful and quiet like a memory that refused to fade. One evening, as they shared dinner in the mess hall, Sira looked at the old holophoto on the wall, a picture of Thal and Eli during a mission, both covered in grease, laughing with their arms around each other. "You were like brothers," she said softly. Eli nodded. "Closer than brothers. He saved my life more times than I can count." Sira smiled faintly. "He said the same of you." That made Eli pause. "He had talked about me?" "Every day," Sira said. "He said you were the only human who understood the Zalari way of honor. But he also said you taught him how to live, not just how to fight." Eli swallowed hard. He remembered Thal once asking him about human funerals, how they honored the dead. He had explained how people shared stories, cried, and tried to keep the person's memory alive through love. Thal had listened carefully, then said, "When I die, Eli, tell stories of me. Make me live again with every word." Eli looked at Sira, his eyes moist. "He asked me to remember him," he said quietly. "Then keep doing so," she replied. "That is how our people keep light in the dark." Later that night, Eli walked through the halls of the Solace. Every sound, every light flicker, every hum reminded him of Thal. He stopped by the command deck, Thal's favorite place. The chair still held the same dent where the old commander used to sit. Eli sat down slowly, placed his hand on the console and whispered, "I miss you, brother." The stars outside the viewport shimmered faintly, as if answering back. He realized then that Thal hadn't just left him memories or a ship. He had left him a part of himself. The courage, the wisdom, the loyalty that had defined Thal still lived in the people he left behind. And now, it was Eli's turn to carry it forward, for Thal, for Sira, and for the future they all still had to build. Peace never lasts long in the galaxy. For months, Eli and Sira lived quietly aboard the Solace. They repaired outposts, delivered supplies, and answered distress calls. The ship had become their moving home, part machine, part memory. Yet beneath the calm routine, something heavy lingered, a feeling that the universe was watching, judging, waiting. And then the message came. It was from the Zalari High Council, the ruling body of Thal's people. The holographic seal glowed blood red, a sign of command, not request. When Eli played it, a counselor's voice filled the room, cold, formal, and sharp. Eli Morgan, human of Sol, you are summoned to the capital world of Zelar. Matters of House Varen require clarification. Bring the widow, Sira Varen. Eli frowned. Clarification? He looked at Sira. What does that mean? She looked pale, her eyes distant. It means they question the bond. They don't believe you are worthy to carry Thal's name. He laughed softly, though it wasn't funny. Yeah, I'm just a human mechanic. Not exactly noble material. Sira's voice was quiet. To them, humans are temporary, fragile. They think Thal made a mistake. The journey to Zelar took 5 days. During that time, Eli barely slept.
He could handle machines, storms, even war. But politics?
That was another kind of battle entirely. Sira seemed calm, though he could tell she was scared too. Sometimes when she thought he wasn't watching, she would touch the small pendant around her neck, the symbol of her house, and whisper something under her breath. When the Solace finally reached orbit around Zelar, the view took Eli's breath away. The planet glowed silver blue beneath twin suns. Rivers of light ran across its surface and the sky shimmered with energy. But even from space, Eli could feel the weight of the world below. Tradition, power, and pride all wrapped in ancient laws. They landed in the capital spire, a massive tower that reached above the clouds. Inside, the air was cool and filled with the scent of burning crystals. Dozens of Zelari nobles stood waiting, their silver eyes watching Eli like he was something unclean. At the center stood the council, 7 figures dressed in flowing robes that shimmered like molten steel. Sira bowed deeply, but Eli stayed standing. He wasn't trying to be rude. He just didn't know how to bow properly, and besides, he didn't feel like lowering his head to anyone. The head counselor's voice was smooth but sharp. Human Eli Morgan, you stand before the Council of Zeller as inheritor of House Varen. Do you understand the weight of that title? Eli swallowed. I understand it was Thal's wish. A ripple of disapproval passed through the crowd. The counselor's expression hardened. Commander Thal was a great warrior, but his final choice was clouded. Our records say you were his subordinate, not his kin. Eli felt anger stir in his chest. He called me his brother. Words, the counselor said coldly. The law of inheritance is meant for Zelari blood, not for outsiders, not for humans. Eli interrupted, his voice rising. The chamber went silent. Every eye turned toward him. Sira looked tense, her hands gripping her robe. Eli took a breath and stepped forward. You talk about honor, but you dishonor the man who gave everything for your people. Thal trusted me, not because of blood, but because of loyalty. If that means nothing to you, then maybe your laws are smaller than your hearts. Gasps filled the hall. One of the counselors hissed, How dare you? But before they could continue, Sira stepped beside Eli. Her voice was calm but strong. Enough. My husband chose Eli. His will is sacred. If you deny his choice, you deny him. The hall fell silent again. Her words carried the authority of a noble, and the love of a widow who would not let her husband's wishes be buried under pride. The counselor hesitated, his silver eyes flicking between them. Finally, he said, We will deliberate. And with that, the council withdrew into their chamber. Eli and Sira waited in the empty hall. He let out a shaky laugh. I think I made some new enemies today. Sira turned to him with a small, proud smile. And perhaps a few who will remember your courage. He shrugged. Courage or stupidity, I'm not sure which. Her eyes softened. Thal once said those two are often the same thing. Eli smiled at that, the memory of Thal's laugh echoing faintly in his mind. For the first time since they'd arrived, he felt calm. Maybe he didn't belong to their world, but he belonged to Thal's promise, and that was enough. Hours later, the council returned. The head counselor spoke in a tone that was neither warm nor cold. By the sacred will of Commander Thal Varen, the inheritance stands. The human Eli Morgan will retain control of House Varen and all associated bonds. Relief washed through Eli's chest. Sierra bowed deeply, but her eyes shone with tears. As they turned to leave, one younger counselor whispered just loud enough for Eli to hear. The stars will judge if this was wisdom or folly. Eli looked back at him and said quietly, "The stars already have. They judged when Thal chose me." Outside, as they walked beneath the twin suns, Sierra looked at Eli and said softly, "You spoke like a true Zelari today." He smiled. "No, I spoke like Thal taught me to, and for the first time since Thal's death, both of them felt a little lighter, as if somewhere among the stars. The old commander was smiling too. The days after the council's judgment passed like slow-moving clouds. For the first time since Thal's death, Eli and Sierra could breathe freely. The solace was theirs again. Their home, their memory, their quiet piece of the universe. The ship drifted between star systems, carrying supplies to broken colonies and lost travelers. It was peaceful work. No battles, no politics, no noise of war. Just the deep hum of the engines and the soft glow of stars outside the viewport. Eli liked it that way. After years of chaos, peace felt strange but welcome. He spent his mornings repairing small systems and his evenings in the command deck, watching the stars. Sierra often joined him there. She moved silently, like she belonged to the rhythm of the ship. Sometimes she would sit across from him, reading from glowing Zelari scrolls. Sometimes she would play her crystal instrument, its soft tones echoing through the room like falling rain. They didn't talk much at first. Words weren't needed. Silence, they both learned, could be a kind of comfort. One evening, Eli was working under a control panel when he heard her humming again, that same haunting melody she had sung for Thal's memory. He looked up, wiping his hands on his shirt. "That song," he said quietly. "You sing it when you miss him, don't you?" She stopped and nodded. "Yes, it is a song for souls that still walk beside us." Eli smiled sadly. "Then you should keep singing it. I think he'd like that." Sierra looked at him for a moment, then said softly, "You miss him too." Eli laughed weakly. "Every day. I still expect him to walk through the door and tell me I'm doing everything wrong." That made her smile. A small, real smile that reached her eyes. "He said you were the most stubborn human he ever met, and he was the most bossy alien I ever met." For the first time in months, they both laughed together. As weeks turned into months, their quiet bond began to grow. Not from love, not yet, but from shared loneliness, shared memories, and the strange peace that comes from being broken in the same way. Sierra started teaching Eli about Zelari culture. She showed him their traditions, how they greeted the stars before sleep, how they believed every soul carried a spark of starlight that never faded. She even taught him a few words in her language. One evening she pointed at a distant star through the viewport and said, "That one is called Thalri. It means the light that guides. It is what our people name for those we honor." Eli looked at her quietly. "You named it after him?" She nodded. "The night he died, I sent a beacon to the sky. The council approved the name." Eli smiled softly. He'd probably say it was too much attention. Sierra laughed gently, a sound like wind chimes. Yes, he would. They sat in silence for a while, just watching the light flicker across the glass. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, Sierra would find Eli asleep at the control desk, the old metal crest of House Varen still in his hand. She would place a blanket over his shoulders and whisper softly, "Rest, human. You have done enough for today." Other times, Eli would find her standing alone in the observation deck, her eyes wet with quiet tears. He never said anything. He just stood beside her until the silence felt less heavy. There was no romance between them. Not in the human sense. Not yet. What they shared was deeper, quieter. It was the kind of closeness that grows in the shadow of grief. Two lives slowly learning to live again. Not because they wanted to, but because someone they loved had asked them to. One day, while checking the ship's navigation system, Eli found an old recording labeled for Eli and Sierra. His heart stopped. It was Thal's voice, faint but clear. "If you are hearing this," the voice said, "then I am gone. But do not grieve forever. You are both my light, my balance. Take care of each other. Laugh for me when I cannot. Live for me when I no longer can." Sierra covered her mouth, eyes shining with tears. Eli sat frozen, his throat tight. Eli, the message continued, you once asked what family means to my people. It means this, not blood, not name, but the choice to stand beside someone even when it hurts. Take her hand when she trembles. Let her guide you when you fall. Together, you will find your way. The recording ended. For a long time, they just sat there, the soft hum of the ship surrounding them. Then Sierra whispered, he knew this moment would come. Eli nodded slowly. Yeah, he always planned ahead. Sierra reached out, hesitated, and then placed her hand on his. It was warm, fragile, but steady. Then we will honor him, she said softly. In every star we cross. Eli closed his fingers around hers. Together, he said. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, bright, patient, and eternal. And in that quiet infinity, two hearts, one human, one alien, began to heal. It had been almost a year since the council had recognized Eli as the new head of House Varen. In that time, the Solace had become more than a ship. It had become a symbol. A human captain and a Zilari noble widow, traveling together, helping colonies on the edge of nowhere. Everywhere they went, people whispered stories about them. The pair who carried the legacy of Commander Thal Varen. Some called them heroes. Others called them fools. But to Eli and Sierra, those words didn't matter. They were just doing what Thal had always done. Protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Still, fate has a strange way of circling back. One morning, a transmission came through the ship's comms. Urgent. Marked with the seal of the Zilari High Council. Sierra opened it and her calm face went pale. Eli, she said quietly, the council requests our help. The outer colonies are under attack. Eli frowned. Pirates? She shook her head. Worse. The Dravik swarm has returned. The same creatures that had brought Thal and Eli together all those years ago. Now they were back, spreading like a disease across the border worlds. Eli clenched his fists. Then we go, Sierra nodded. They would not have called you unless they were desperate. When the Solace arrived near the colony world of Kiros, chaos filled the skies. Dravik warships moved like black insects, firing plasma bolts into cities below. Zilari defense fleets struggled to hold the line. The planet's atmosphere glowed with fire. Eli didn't hesitate. All power to shields. Arm plasma turrets, Sierra moved beside him, her hands flying over the controls. The ship responded like a living thing, its engines roaring to life. Thal built this ship for war, Sierra said. Let it fight once more. Eli nodded. Let's show them what the Solace can do. The battle that followed was fierce and endless. The Solace darted between enemy ships, blasting through Dravik armor, shielding smaller vessels from fire. Eli gave orders with calm precision, his voice echoing through the comms. Squad 3, flank left. Keep your shields high. Target that cruiser's reactor now. Sierra coordinated rescue operations, her voice steady even as the ship shook around them. She directed evacuation pods, guided wounded ships, and never once lost focus. Hours later, the main Dravik command vessel appeared. Massive, dark, and pulsing with energy. Eli knew they had to take it down or the colony would fall. Sierra, he said quietly, prepare the fusion lance. Her eyes widened. Eli, that weapon could tear the ship apart if the systems overload. He looked at her, his voice calm. Then we'll aim carefully. Together they charged the weapon. The ship trembled, lights flickering. At the last second, Sierra placed her hand over his on the firing control. For Thal, she whispered. For Thal, Eli echoed. The lance fired, a brilliant beam of white light that sliced through the Dravik flagship like a blade through paper. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the enemy ship exploded, scattering burning fragments across the sky. The battle was over. The colonies were safe. When the smoke cleared, the Zilari fleet hailed them. The council appeared on the main screen, their faces filled with awe. The head counselor, the same one who had once doubted Eli, bowed deeply. Eli Morgan of Earth, he said. House Varen has saved us again. The council owes you a debt of honor. Eli shook his head. You owe Thal, his ship, his dream. Sierra stood beside him, her chin high. Thal's dream lives because of both of us. The counselor nodded slowly. Then perhaps the dream belongs to all of us now. The transmission ended. Later, when the ship drifted quietly above the healed world, Sira and Eli stood together at the viewport. The planet glowed beneath them, peaceful once more. Sira turned to him. "You fought like him today." Eli smiled softly. "He taught me everything I know." She looked out at the stars. "Do you ever feel he is still with us?" He nodded slowly. "Every time I make a choice that feels impossible." They stood there in silence. The war was over, but something inside them had changed. They weren't just two survivors tied by loss anymore. They were partners, not by law, but by purpose. Sira placed her hand on the glass. "Thou would be proud," she whispered. Eli smiled faintly. "Let's make sure he always will be." When they returned to Zellar, the people lined the streets of the capital. For the first time in history, a human was greeted as a hero by an alien world. The council placed Thal's crest, and now polished and shining, in Eli's hand once more. "House Varen lives," they said, "and its heart beats with two worlds." As the twin suns rose above the silver towers, Eli looked at Sira beside him, strong, calm, and radiant. And he finally understood what Thal had meant years ago. Family is not who shares your blood. It's who stands beside you when the stars go dark. Years passed as quietly and steadily as the stars themselves. The war ended. The colonies rebuilt. The Drevik were pushed back into the cold corners of the galaxy, and through it all the Solace still flew. Slower now, older, but proud. Inside, time had left its gentle marks. The once bright metal walls had faded. The hum of the engines had softened. Yet every corner of that ship still whispered with memories. Laughter, loss, promises, and hope. Eli Morgan had grown older. His hair had streaks of silver. His voice carried the calm weight of years. But his eyes still held that same spark, the one Thal had once called the fire of humanity. Sira had changed too. The glow of her skin had dimmed slightly, the shimmer of her markings softer with age, but her presence was still serene and strong. Her voice still carried the gentle music of her people. Together they had built something rare, not a house or a title, but a bridge between two worlds. Humans and Zellari now traded freely, learned from one another, even married across species. The name Varen had become a symbol of unity, of trust. It all began with one friendship, and the promise to keep a dream alive. One evening, as the Solace drifted in orbit above Zellar, Eli sat alone in the observation deck. The twin suns were setting, painting gold light across the planet below. He held Thal's crest in his hands, old, worn, but unbroken. He smiled to himself. "You'd like what we've done, old friend," he murmured. "You'd probably still complain about my flying, though." Sira entered quietly, her steps soft on the metal floor. "Talking to him again?" Eli looked up, a little embarrassed. "Yeah, he listens better than most people." She smiled faintly and sat beside him. "He would have been proud, Eli. The council is naming the new alliance after House Varen." He nodded. "I heard. The Varen Accord." Sira placed a small crystal on the table between them, a glowing memory stone. Inside it shimmered with faint blue light. It contains every record of our travels, every battle, every world we helped rebuild. I want it placed in the Great Hall. Eli looked at it for a long moment. "Our story?" She nodded. "Our story. His legacy." For a long while they sat together in silence, watching the stars. Then Sira spoke again, her voice soft. "Eli, I have been thinking. I wish to return to the Sanctuary of Lights. My time grows near." Eli turned sharply toward her. "Sira," she smiled gently, cutting him off. "Do not grieve, my friend. My people believe that when we fade, our light returns to the stars. I will still be here, just brighter." He swallowed hard. "You've been my only family for years. I don't know how to say goodbye." Sira looked at him, her eyes kind. "Then don't. Promise me only this, when my time comes you will fly the Solace one last time. Take my ashes to the edge of the galaxy. Release them into the light." Eli couldn't speak for a moment. His throat tightened. Finally he nodded slowly. "I promise." Months later the day came. Sira lay on the same medical bed Thal had once rested on. Her breathing soft, her glow faint. Eli sat beside her, holding her hand. "Do you see it?" She whispered weakly. He frowned. "See what?" "The light. Calling me home." Tears welled in his eyes. "Yeah, I see it." Her last smile was peaceful. "Then let it guide you too." Her hand grew still. The glow faded, and the room fell silent except for the hum of the ship. Weeks later, the Solace floated beyond the last known star, deep into the quiet dark of space. Eli stood by the airlock holding a small silver urn. He pressed a button. The door slid open and a stream of soft starlight filled the room. He whispered, "Goodbye, Sierra. You've earned your place among the stars." He opened the urn and her ashes drifted out, glowing faintly as they scattered into the void. For a moment they formed a shimmer, like the outline of her face smiling, and then faded into the cosmic night. Eli watched until the last spark disappeared. Then he whispered, "Tell Thal I kept my promise." Years later, when explorers found the Solace drifting near the edge of known space, they discovered a single log entry in the captain's console. It was Eli's voice, calm and warm. "To whoever finds this ship carried 3 souls once, a human, a Zalari, and a dream. We built something worth remembering. If you're listening, don't let the old divisions return. Keep building bridges. Keep the light alive." The message ended with a faint laugh. "And if you ever see a bright star shaped like a wing, tell them Eli says hi." Outside the viewport, 2 stars burned side by side, one golden, one blue, their light crossing the dark together forever, and thus, the legacy of House Varen lived on, not in power, not in wealth, but in the eternal bond between a man, his alien friend, and the dream they never let die.